Sometimes when we begin to question our faith or have doubts about our tradition, it can feel like we are wandering out into the desert. When we take a step back and honestly evaluate organized religion in the 21st century, many times it doesn't make any sense. The more we cling to it and try to save it, the worse it becomes. In addition, widespread abuse, cover-ups, and victim shaming cause some of us to question whether it will ever be right again.
The Desert Sanctuary was created by Karl and Laura Forehand. It consists of a podcast, a blog, along with Karl and Laura's writing.
We're happy you're here. Welcome to the show. Hi, welcome to the Desert Sanctuary. I'm Laura Forehand. I'm here with Karl Forehand. And we're excited for our next discussion today. Really looking forward to it. Our first one with Dave the Mystic was really enlightening, really good.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I'm that's our first person in this series, but I'm already into it. So yeah.
It's good. So it's on sale right now, but by the time this comes out in a few weeks, it won't be on sale anymore. So I guess that really doesn't matter, but we're excited about continuing the conversation that we get to keep, kind of working through this idea that's especially important to us since I was a former pastor and we're deconstructing our religion. We want to talk about that. We want to have a discussion about it. And what we're discussing today kind of goes along with it. This series is called Things We Don't Know and Want to Know More About. And I feel like Derek Zoolander when I say that from the, what was this phrase?
I don't know. I haven't memorized it.
He wanted to build a school for kids that don't know much and want to know more about stuff. And so that's what I always feel like when I say the title of this series is Things We Don't Know and Want to Know More About. So, but we're here today to talk to our guest.
Yeah.
And Laura's going to tell you a little bit more about her.
Yeah. So Dr. Siri K. Zemel is an advocate for integrative healing, including the incorporation of spiritual experiences alongside traditional healthcare. Dr. Zemel received her PhD in mind-body medicine from Saybrook University with a concentration in healthcare systems. She holds a master's degree in nutrition science with a graduate minor in counseling psychology from the University of Tennessee. Dr. Zemel is the author of Guided Journey into the Unknown to Awaken the Soul and in Truth. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are... I actually got to read the book. I think I listened to it, but I listened to all of it while I was exercising. I'm recovering from a stroke about a year ago, so I get to go to the gym and work on that. And so it was really interesting to listen to. But we want to hear kind of a short version of your story and what detail you want to go into. Just tell us who you are, kind of where you come from, and how your story evolved here.
Sure. Okay. So I was born Catholic in Memphis, Tennessee, and went to Catholic schools and loved it. I was the only one in my family that did. All my sisters hated it and thought it was just horrendous that our parents did that to us. I thought it was sweet and special. I adored it. When I was in high school, though, I, really got into some exploration. I went to a youth group with some of my other friends who were Methodist, and then, of course, got into psychedelics and parties and expansion of consciousness, and then into yoga and meditation from there. Early in college, got really into yoga and meditation, and really enjoyed that just expansion of consciousness and connection with divinity in non-religious ways. But that did lead to the religion that was associated with it in my learning was Sikhism, which is an Eastern religion that believes it's monotheistic, one God. and that sort of God is all, right? Like I think one of the phrases from that religion is, if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. So I loved that, just sort of the all is one mentality, which I still am very, very much believe in today. So I did adopt that religion, and in so doing, is when I changed my name. So my birth name was Jill, and then Jill Kristen, actually, which translates into Christian girl, and then was given the name Siri Datar, which translates as great infinite giver. So don't know that I'll ever live up to that name fully, but that was a little bit of my background on religion and spirituality. Well, actually, I guess I could keep going and tell you from that point, I ended up marrying a Jew, a man who's Jewish, who then, since our marriage, has really deepened in his religiosity and Orthodox Judaism. So very, very Orthodox, sort of doesn't use electricity on the weekends, doesn't drive on Saturdays, very, very Orthodox. So that's unusual situation. But in terms of kind of my story, that's all the periphery, right? In terms of my heart, my soul, and my mission and my purpose or my existence here, can't say that I fully understand my mission and purpose, trying to uncover that every day, I think. But in terms of kind of my soul journey, ever since I was a little girl, I had a language that moved through me. Just often when I was young, I would speak in this language by myself, and I was kind of playing in my room. And it was pretty big part of me until maybe age 4 or 5. And then it just dissipated into the background. It would just spill out sort of in the middle of the night, or I, fell down or got startled or something. It would just sort of spill over. When in my young adulthood, I was really deepening my meditation practice, my yoga practice, the language was much more prominent and would come out, when I was at home, just sweeping the floors, or, driving around in the car by myself, usually when I was alone, it was just spill over. And at one point, it became very, very prominent, and I wanted to learn more about it, sort of became curious about it. And this was more probably in my 30s, thought, well, gosh, what is that? What is that thing that flows through me? Because when it flows through me, it feels divine. It feels wonderful. It feels so peaceful. It feels so connected. And so I got really curious, like, oh gosh, what is it? Am I kind of crazy? Am I going, what if I have multiple personalities? What I have this thing moving through? What in the world? And so I reached out to a friend of mine who's a therapist, like, hey, can I go just kind of share it with you? Get it, like, make sure I'm not crazy, like share this with you. And so she really held space, and in her office, I would go into just a couple deep breaths of meditation and let the language pour out, and did that for a while. And, her holding the space for me to do that is really beautiful. And each time I did it, would have these incredible messages and information and insight, and deep, deep sense of euphoria, deep sense of peace, deep sense of bliss and connection. And, after, a couple of months, she's, yeah, you're not crazy. This is beautiful. This is a deep spiritual experience, and go with it and keep exploring it. And what I did in that process was, use that space, kind of dedicated time and space, close my eyes down, relax my breath, let the language come out, and then slowly begin to identify the meaning, the intent, the messages that were coming through. So essentially interpreting, right? And so then I continued to do that practice for a while. I think it was about 10 years of that, where I started to record when I would go into the sessions, let the language come out, receive the messages, and then, transcribe those, which ultimately became the book, or a big part of the book was those messages that came through. It really wasn't until I was writing the book and sharing my messages and sharing the stories that I realized, oh, this is speaking in tongues. That's what this is. And I had no exposure to that earlier in my life. I had never experienced that in the religious setting or the spiritual setting. I didn't know anyone who spoke in tongues. I really didn't even know what that meant. But it's a language that comes through me that is not English, that connects me with something very divine, that feels very euphoric and beautiful. And that's, I guess chatting with other people, so well, that's, sort of angel speak or angel tongue or speaking in tongues or all that. I don't know what it is, right? I cannot really, really fully academically articulate the process or the area of my brain that's being activated or what truly is happening. Except for that, it is very, very instructive, has been very instructive of me in my life, provided me immense guidance in my life in terms of decisions and really finding a place of peace and authenticity and truth and connection with power greater than myself. I will share there's an element that, my belief system is around spiritual guidance and spiritual guides. They're being non-physical beings on the other side, whether they be ascended masters, spiritual guides, angels, don't know. I've learned a lot in having these dialogues, but that is my belief of what it is. Could it be part of my psyche? Sure. Could it be my imagination? Okay. Could it be God? Don't know. My belief is that there are spirits or entities that help us along, that guide us along, that can happen through thoughts, through drives, through messages, through signs and symbols in our lives, through images, through nudges, and in my case, through this tongue speak that contains messages.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the nutshell of the story.
Yeah, and if you were talking to some of my old friends and you said speaking in tongues, they would automatically put you in a category of very high control religion, Assembly of God type of box, or kind of pigeonhole you into very specific Christian high control religion. But this is kind of coming from somewhere else, it has different origins. It's not something you felt like you had to do. It was something that emerged in you, right?
Something that was really always part of me since I was a little kid, which is it flowed through me. And it's funny, my understanding, I've never been to one of those churches. I've never had that experience. Still, I've heard about it. From what I've heard others say is that in that, I guess I've heard it referred to as charismatic, that in that environment, it's very, very high energy. It's very dramatic. And the experience is very different for me. So this voice comes through me when I'm in meditation, when I'm sitting quietly, and it just comes out like words, like quiet words, but they're just not in English. So it's not dramatic or high energy. I'm not, dancing or, doing anything else like that. So, and whether or not it has the same soul origin, I don't know. Are they tapping into this thing that moves through me as well? And why did it choose me? I don't know. Is it something about my brain structure? Is it how I'm made? Is it a gift? Those are questions I don't really have answers to. All I know is that it's beautiful and it really feels good. And it gives me just incredible guidance.
Yeah. It has, one time a Catholic sister told me, she wrote on the board, I wasn't Catholic, but she said, none of us are right. And so, and then just turned around and looked at us. Now, to me, that makes me respect you more when you say, I don't totally understand it, or I don't, I don't have all the answers. And sometimes I feel like if we label something or say, this is exactly what it is, and we limit it and we stop trying to discover it, right?
Right.
Can I explain something to you about my practices? So I
Sure,
come
please.
from like I say, a high control religion, Baptist. Laura was Lutheran, and we joined, and I messed up part of her life. Anyway, but so I was a pastor in that environment for 20 years and started to deconstruct, started to doubt some of the things I believed and kind of unravel that. And as it unraveled, I discovered new things because I felt like I was on a journey. So I would hear talk about guides and spiritual masters and things like that, and even angels. And I would try guided meditations like from YouTube. They're supposed to help with that.
Mhm.
And I got a little bit frustrated in that it seemed like if there's a veil there, it was really thick for me.
Mhm.
But something I did notice is I'm a writer, and I've been writing since I started on this journey of deconstruction. I did notice that just almost, when my mind was the clearest and not cluttered with a lot of things, then writing topics would come to me, and the outline of what I was going to say and the structure of it, not in an audible voice, but I just all of a sudden
You're
knew
right.
what to write. And it seemed like I was learning as I was writing. And that's been that way through some of my books. Can you speak to that and
Sure.
help me
Yeah,
clarify a little bit?
that's beautiful. And I feel like the, divine source flows through all of us in different ways. And, you have beautiful art behind you on the walls, and whoever did that beautiful art had divine hand flowing through them in choosing those colors and shapes and how it flowed on the canvas and on the paper. For you, it comes through, words on the page, and it sounds like it flows through you. It's of you, but beyond you, all at the same time, right? So you're in that process of co-creation with the divine. Truly, you're a channel, and so it's no different, right? So an artist, a writer is a channel, just like I'm a channel. And it took me a lot of years to accept that because maybe because I was raised Catholic, maybe it's just my personality, but have been filled with shame my whole life, just deep, deep shame and embarrassment over it because it's weird and it's unusual. And I value education, and I'm in a home that values education. And I ended up getting my doctorate partly to try and discern this and understand this. And I ultimately abandoned studying this in my doctorate because it felt like I wasn't able to honor the mystery of it by really, really pinning it down and, being raked over the academic coals, so to speak. But being a channel is something that I'm still grappling with, that identity, right? Sort of that spiritual identity, because the world in which we live values, like you said, values certainty and things that can be explained and status quo and evidence-based, experiences. And so because I've always been kind of a high achiever in the work world and in my career, and I think I've also had a lot of probably struggle around the ego and what people think about me. It's been really difficult for me to fully embrace and accept and honor I'm a spiritual medium. I'm a channel. But really, the truth is, so are you. So is the artist that did the work behind you. So are so many musicians and dancers. And so many of us, right, are just channeling a force and a source and an energy and a creativity that isn't just that we can't really take full credit for, But anyway, I'm still very much in that journey.
Yeah.
So I love that image of being a channel. And I wrote that down. How do we discern, what it is that is flowing through us? I say that because when I look at art, I can see that for artists, right? I can see that for writers and other artists, musicians, things like that. But then there's like, someone like me so how do we discern what is what divine goodness is flowing through us? How do we tap into that? How do we figure that out? Or do we,
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that's a, billion-dollar question that I don't have the answer
Right.
to. But I will say, I think that it flows through every single human being. It's impossible not to, because every human is an element of creation, and creation and creator cannot be discerned, cannot be separated, right? I mean, we, just like every tree, every flower, every cloud, we're part of creation, right? Yes, we have an ego and a personality and thoughts and limits. Yes, of course we do, which differentiates us from the rest of the natural world. But the supernatural moves through everything in the natural world, like without question. Every mother, father, like the words that flow through us, ways that we guide and teach and nurture, just the things that we do on the daily basis, right? I mean, tying a kid's shoe or giving them a bath or comforting someone who is sad. I mean, all of those things, yes, we're doing those, but can we really take credit? I don't know. I mean, I think it's really, it's a tough thing to discern. Where does source, creator, start and stop? Where do we as separate personalities, egos, entities start and stop? It's like, here's the way that I see it. I see it as that there is this energy of creation, of all of creation that moves through every element of creation. But we as humans, because we have egos, we have filters, veils, right? We have things that interrupt that flow. We have things that that create this sense of separateness, that we feel like we're separate entities. Like, we're not part of creation. We're not divine. Of course we couldn't be. We're our own unique selves. And in a way, sure, that's true in the world of form, but truly we're all just energy. We're all just a manifestation of creation, right? And I think it's this blessing and this curse that we have a brain and an ego and a psyche that feels like it separates us. You know what I'm saying? It's like, It's beautiful because it's so unique. Like, there's no two grains of sand that are the same. There's no two snowflakes that are the same. There's no two humans that are the same, because we all have this unique soul print, right? This unique vibration that's only ours, that is like, we're that channel, that filter through which everything flows. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, I would for some reason I want to call it an isness that each of us has.
You broke up. I'm sorry. Call it what?
An isness.
Isness, yeah.
It's like each of us has an isness, but it seems like our deepest experiences are when we connect. Mm-hmm. And Laura and I often say that we're hardwired for connection. Mm-hmm. And so now I find myself in deconstruction replacing a lot of words like prayer and worship with connection or communion. Being with, connecting. And those are the times I feel the most spiritual. Those are the times I feel real or authentic. And authentics become a big word for us too, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, then the flow is moving through and connecting with the flow in others, right? And it's like, when we separate and isolate, that filter is, that boundary, that encasement is really strong and rigid, and we're just kind of left in our own energy cycling inside of ourselves, right? When we open up to another, there's something flowing through us and through the other person. It's like electricity. You can feel it, right? And that's like we're returning home. We're returning to source. We're remembering source, because that encasement that separates us from the world is kind of shattered, or at least thinned, right? That veil becomes thin in that interconnectivity. That's what it feels like.
So is that flow that you're talking about? Like, I can relate to that in aspects of my life. okay, so I'll give an example, and I've given this example several times, but it is especially present when I'm holding my grandchildren. There is this flow between us. I can feel it. But is it something that, I mean, are there moments that we feel that flow more strongly than other times?
Very
Do you
much
see what I'm
so.
saying? Because I'm not in the presence of grandchildren all the time. Can't say that I feel that flow. It is definitely there when we are, body against body. But also, thinking of those times, I feel there's flow. It's not exactly the same, but is that something that is definitely stronger at times? Maybe we don't feel it at all other times.
Which doesn't mean that it's not there, right? And I don't know why that is. I went to the beach last week and I stood in front of the ocean and just felt this immense connection with something so much bigger than myself, and this force and this beauty and this timelessness. And I'm going to tell you, I went in the morning to watch the sunrise. And I have really fair skin and a history of skin cancer. I'm pretty young, but have had 5 surgeries so far in skin cancer, just sort of my, kryptonite. So I'm going to tell you that if I stood at the beach in the middle of the summer at 3:00 in the afternoon, would I have felt that same overpowering connection? No, I wouldn't, because I would have been scared and like, oh, do I have enough sunscreen on? Okay, I can only be out here for 10 minutes and then to get back in. And okay, it's really hot. I can feel it would not have been the same experience. And so I feel like there's some type of cognitive component that the way that we're designed, we are more receptive in some areas and environments than we are in others, right? It doesn't mean that opportunity for connection doesn't always exist. But there's some places where we limit ourselves. We shut ourselves down. We're just not willing or able to make that connection with that person at that time, in that environment, whatever. Do we do that to ourselves? Do we kind of keep ourselves in these prisons where it's difficult to constantly, feel like, one goal and value, which I will probably never achieve in this life as a human, is to feel that same level of connectivity with any human that I interact with, or any, time that I'm in nature. Am I even close to that? Hell no. I'm terrible at it, right? Because my own ego and fears and anxieties and judgments and criticisms and things that interfere with my ability to feel that sense of oneness with other people or elements of creation. So I believe that it's always there, that the potential is always there. Now, I don't know. Also, I cannot explain how it works, but I am definitely a believer in reincarnation and the soul's journey through lifetimes, and the chemistry that we feel with other people, or even, spiritually at times, that is not equal, right? To when 2 people fall in love, is it just because of their cognitive filters that, create a sense of receptivity? Or is there an electricity that we feel because those 2 souls have been together before, or that they have karma, or that they have a journey, or that they have work to do, or that they have, soul contracts that they agreed before this life that they were going to be in this life together and support one another? I don't know. I do feel that and believe that you and your granddaughter, did you have a contract in this life? Were you together in previous lives? Is it any of that, or is it just so beautiful that she's your granddaughter? I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'll take it all.
Take whatever. Yeah.
I'll take whatever.
Whatever I
Yeah.
can. So is it an accurate label to put on you? Is it a meme at times? Are you able to help people speak to to people that aren't physically here.
Yes.
Okay. So, and what I always wonder about that is like, if Laura and I are here, we're not right next to you physically, but we're kind of tuned into each other right now. Can you sense things about us, or
so I'm not a
you know,
psychic. Yeah. In the little bit of research that I've done in the last couple of years since really coming to terms with that. So when I wrote the book and came out with the book, it was very much a coming out journey for me, very much an internal process of being okay, self-acceptance. This is how I was designed. This is who I am. I don't get it. I don't understand it. But damn it, if I'm not just tired of beating myself up and hiding from the world. So here it is. And here I am. And so since doing that, have done many more sessions with other people. And in a session, I'll sit with someone either in person or over video conference like this, over Zoom, and connect, starting with a prayer, closing my eyes down, letting the language flow. It always starts with this tongue speak flowing through me and asking for, just protection when I open my spirit up. In so doing, at that point, I'm opening up to whatever messages and information my guides have for me. And often, always, the other person that I'm working with, information will come in for them about them. I am not a psychic, so I don't, see things. But when I open myself up to receiving information from the spiritual realm, there are messages for them. There's information from them. Sometimes unasked for, but often asked for. Individuals will say, I really want to connect with, my father, or my grandmother, or my sister, or somebody on the other side, if they happen to come through. And so I'll always open up and just say, if you're there, come through. And more times than not, that's exactly what happens. And they'll come through and they'll and what ends up happening is that I can feel in my body emotions, right? And I get images and words and messages. A lot of times I don't understand them, but I'll share them anyway. And I get these feelings, like I can feel an overwhelming sense of love or connection or protection or curiosity or, whatever it is. And then I'm communicating that kind of. So all that I can say is, yes, I've become this channel where these other energies are communicating through me. And when I first started doing it, it was really, really exhausting. Like I would just get this really big headache and I would just get really tired and just absolutely wiped for the rest of the day. It's still, when I do it, it's like an intense workout, but different. It's kind of hard to explain. So something is happening is all I'm saying. Like I know I'm not making it up. Right. I can feel in my body that something, some force, some energy or vibration or spirit that's not me is moving through me and communicating through me. And just about 100% of the time that I sit and do this with others, the person that I'm working with is tearing and crying and very, very emotionally touched. Right. And I know I don't know what I'm communicating to them, but they're feeling something, some very, very strong emotional connectivity. So I respect that. I honor that. Frankly, I'm scared of that because it feels like an enormous responsibility, right? An enormous responsibility. And I work in behavioral health. I've worked in behavioral health for the last, almost 20 years. And so I work with psychologists and therapists and other providers. And in that, there's a lot of education. There's a lot of licensure. There's a lot of continuing ed. There's a lot of boundary setting, just a lot of responsibility in caring for the space, the environment, and the emotions of the other person, right? To make sure that it's very, very ethical, very safe, very healing environment. So I'm trained in that setting, right? So when I have these experiences where some force is moving through me, creating this really strong emotional reaction in another person, to me, all of a sudden, I feel like, whoa, this is a big responsibility. I want to make sure that I'm honoring and respecting this as I should, right? And the difficulty that I've come into is that in this world, I haven't quit my day job and just moved over to be a spiritual medium. I kind of want to, but I kind of don't, because but here's where I got held up, was when I opened myself into accepting, okay, fine, this is who I am. I get it. I'm just going to love myself through this, which is really hard every day, but I'm just going to love myself through this. I started exploring and looking. There's no licensure, accreditation, scope of practice boundaries, ethical standards in this work, right? There's a lot of private individuals who say, oh, pay me a couple $1,000s and I'll show you the way. Well, okay, that might be okay, but there's nothing that's neutral, nonprofit, published criteria for the field. Just like if you were going in any profession, right? If I was going to become, a therapist or a life coach or an acupuncturist or whatever, there's a very clear path for doing that in a way that's thoughtful and safe and, and ethical. So what I'm doing right now is I'm engaging in research in that area. So I've partnered with an organization called IONS. It's the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And their research director and I have run a study on surveying across the country mediums and channelers who do this professionally, and looking at ethical standards, scope of practice guidelines, the development of a neutral nonprofit association. And so we've completed that research analysis, and are in the publication stages of that research. So that's really all that I can think to do at this point, to give back. And I do believe that some people are absolutely born with these skills and gifts, or curses, or just whatever, how we're designed, right? I don't know why, but I do feel a sense of responsibility. What I don't want to do is exploit it or abuse it, or just use it to make money, or just use it to make people feel good, right? And it is beautiful, and it does make a difference in people's lives and healing journeys when they have lost loved ones and they can connect to the other side. It can be incredibly impactful in the healing process from grief. And when individuals are kind of lost in their lives, I see myself more as a spiritual medium than a true, and I don't know if true medium is, because I can connect with spirits on the other side, but more so what seems to be really, really strong for me is the spiritual side of it, is the spiritual guidance and spiritual guides, and sort of how you're living your life now and kind of where your energy is now, more so than, Aunt Matilda said that the, pantry has got that's fine and good. But that's, to me, the vibration of healing and guidance from the other side is just what seems to flow through me. So that's just where I am in my journey.
Yeah. So this may be a tough question for me to ask, but several things you've said have made me think about it. A lot of the healing from our religious trauma came from what I would call shadow work, inner child work, and mainly through a process called focusing that was using Genelin in the 70s. It's kind of Jungian based and so on. The body keeps the score.
Yes.
We have a felt sense of trauma in our lives, in our bodies, and so on. And so we did some of that work. Part of me feels, and once we would feel it, change would take place.
Yes.
And we were then to move on down the road and deal with different things, more repressed trauma,
layer by layer.
Yeah. I guess just briefly, opinion of all of that kind of stuff. Your body, you talk about, you kind of mention, you feel things in your body even when you're channeling with other people. And
100%. So my undergraduate and graduate degrees are in nutrition science, and I practiced as a registered dietitian for many years. And even still, I work as a consultant for eating disorder treatment facilities. And so in eating disorder treatment, this is this is a really big part of the treatment is the somatic work, right? And we know that you mentioned the body keeps the score, and I'm just a huge Bessel van der Kolk fan, huge crush on him, and Stephen Porges and the polyvagal theory. But that the way that our bodies are designed is to store trauma, right? And so for individuals with eating disorders, and who in America doesn't at some point have some level of disordered relationship with food or body? Pretty much 100% of us if we live in this culture. But that somatic experience of returning to the body and healing the nervous system. And it really goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is allowing that flow to move through us, right? And being more aligned and more attuned and more transparent and more authentic, and, letting that move through us and not kind of holding these spaces where we're tense and tight and rigid and just, holding on to old baggage. But I'm very big believer in that. And there's a lot of, neurobiology that supports that.
So I'm glad that we have a little bit of time here to do a lightning round. I love to just, one of my friends calls herself a mystic. And when I talk to her, she can spend an hour talking about 2 words. So I'm asking you to condense it way down. I want to give you a few words that have emerged for us. And it seems like people in all different areas of life we talk to, and we talk about these words. It seems to be part of whatever you want to call it, consciousness, or they're important words. So I'll just throw them out, and you can say pass if you want to. First word is compassion. Tell me about compassion.
Compassion is a gateway to interconnectivity with others. Compassion lives in our heart. Compassion, I don't know, it's like a blend of communion, communing, and passion, that energy, that essence, right? It's again opening ourselves up to the flow, because when we judge and criticize one another, which we do all day, every day, we're human. It's just what we do. It separates us from one another. It keeps us in our ego. It keeps us in our filters. It keeps us in pain and isolation. When we move from judgment and criticism to compassion, it helps us move to that state and that place of understanding that we're really all the same. We're human beings trying to figure this thing out. We all have bodies, we all have brains, we all have nervous systems, we all have traumas. And so it connects us again.
Good. Okay. How about authenticity? I heard you mention authenticity.
Authenticity is the bold, radical acceptance of who we are, period, full stop. And living in that with our true voice, with, I could definitely talk about this for a long time. You mentioned shadow side and shadow work, and right, it's sort of this conundrum that you want to be fully open and authentic and true to yourself. And like 70% of what we are, we don't realize because it's in our shadow side. And so it's this constant work of being radically honest with ourselves, recognizing our hypocrisies, recognizing our resistances, staying curious about that. But here's where I really struggle is I love self-development. I love self-improvement. I love striving to be the best version of myself that I can be. And what happens in that sometimes is that I kind of am too hard on myself and I beat myself up, and then I get frustrated and depressed and upset with myself, right? To be fully authentic is to accept myself exactly as I am, who I am, where I am, without judgment and criticism. Yet, to be fully authentic, we're constantly wanting to uncover that shadow side and those barriers and filters that keep us from being a clear conduit, right, and fully connected. So I feel it's a bit of a conundrum and a paradox.
Yeah. All right, just one more. That's presence. What about presence?
Presence to me relates to mindfulness, which relates to awareness and consciousness, noticing. And gosh, if it doesn't just go back to the same conversation that we're having about filters and barriers and the things that keep us separate and our judgments and criticisms, right? Those are the things that interfere with our ability to be present. Those are the things that keep us boxed up. But to be present also requires authenticity and truth and honesty of what is, right? And I feel like so like all of us, okay, let's just humans, it's scary to be present, right? It's hard to be present. And we want to real quickly, oh, hold on. Let me just check my, whatever, right? I just want to like remove myself from this moment and go into another moment where I feel more safe in the digital world or in my phone or, whatever it is. Or let me tell you about some great accomplishment that I did rather than sitting with the vulnerable sensations that are coming up in my body that I really don't want to feel right now. So I'm just going to shut those down and, not be present. Presence is beautiful and really hard.
Mm-hmm. So I'll give you one more, but I'll give you my take on it. And then maybe you can just say, Karl, that's exactly right. I don't know.
My gosh.
I'm just kidding. So the word is acceptance. And I learned about it listening to Toltec kind of wisdom stuff. But acceptance is hard for Laura and I think, because it seems like a cop-out. But what we're discovering is that acceptance is really learning to say it is what it is.
Yes.
Instead of, faking ourselves out or whatever you want to describe that. So, anything else you'd say about acceptance?
Well, just like almost, everything else, I think in spiritual wisdom, it's a paradox. And I think you're exactly right. It is that paradox of radical acceptance of everything that is in fact the fastest way to change. Wait, but you're not supposed to change when you're accepting. Yeah. And that's the paradox, right? Is that you are, we are, I am 100% what I am, we are in this moment. And that's beautiful and that's perfect and that's divine. And there's more to uncover and learn and explore and let emerge. Because when I say, well, yeah, you're pretty cool, but there's this one thing about you that I really don't like. Well, then I'm judging and I'm criticizing and I'm separating myself from you. And then we're disconnecting, right? So it slows everything down because then I'm just living in that illusion even longer.
It's good.
That is really good. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah.
I have so many thoughts running through my head now. That's
we may have follow-up emails.
Yeah, for sure.
So we ask everybody this question. If you had a billboard that you could write a phrase on or an idea, what would you want to communicate to the whole world on your billboard? We didn't prepare you for this question.
Yeah, so. And I don't know that I'm enlightened enough to answer that question because I want to go ahead and just acknowledge my own filters right here. So because of the work that I do, my day job, I have to do a lot in the area of marketing. That's a big part of, business consulting that I do is on the marketing side. And so, of course, my first question before I answer that question, well, who's the audience? What we say depends on who's going to hear it. Which, of course, this is not, that's the wrong answer, in a spiritual context. So I have to admit my limit on that one because my filter is so strong that my cognitive mind just, shuts that one down real quick.
Yeah. So if I were to mention something about flow, you talked about flow is it, it's not right phrase. I always say get into the flow, join the flow.
I would say remember the flow. It's happening all around us all the time, every second, every moment. We separate ourselves from it. right? And so to let go, to surrender, to receive, to open up, to return. It's like returning home. It's remembering what we already know, but we forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That's really good.
Yeah, I'm writing as you're talking.
Yeah. So if our audience wants to, has any follow-up questions for you or wants to know more about you, how can they get a hold of you?
Probably just find me online, SiriZemel.com. Yeah.
That's
And
great.
we'll put that in the show notes and the things that we do. But we just want to thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. It's an honor.
We could say Siri Zemel. That's what we want. We're kind of low tech, low edit, all that kind of stuff. But we've enjoyed having you here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I enjoyed chatting with you both. It was a delight to meet you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
For everyone out there, we hope you keep getting involved in the conversation as we're evolving, as we're changing. We, of course, hope you read our book, but also reach out to people like Siri and read her book.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that getting away from certainty and searching, like she's talking about, would be very beneficial. But thank you for joining us today. As always, be where you are, be who you are, be at peace.
Thank you for joining us today on the Desert Sanctuary. We hope you find who you are as you embark on your own journey.
For all of us here at the Desert Sanctuary, be who you are, be where you are, and be at peace.